Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Background. I'm a teacher of math and science. Let's call me Miss Mary. When I was fresh out of college, the job market wasn't so wonderful. I was great at what I do, but I absolutely suck at doing interviews. Coming to a point of almost giving up, an opportunity was handed to me. A former lecturer of mine recommended me to a higher institution for an assistant lecturer position, which was awesome, or so I thought. I went in, did the interview, and was hired right on the spot with the stipulation that I would work for a year being tested on contract, and if I performed well, I'd be hired permanently. I did exceptional. I got the highest evaluation score in my department, got not one bad student evaluation, and was made the secretary of my department as well as the social development coordinator. Things took a turn when I got the second half of my contract and realized that I would essentially not be employed for the summer term. I fought tooth and nail. My department head, Mrs. P, false name, fought tooth and nail, but no one would budge. Disappointing. As it was, I was out. 2 weeks before the start of the fall term, Mrs. P called me. Mrs. P, Miss Mary, will you be coming back to work with us for this term? Me. No, I haven't heard anything from the institution since my contract ended 3 months ago. Mrs. P, that's funny because they have a timetable prepared for you. That was the beginning of a lot of back and forth between the institution and I. I was told to write a letter stating why I was upset with not being paid for 3 months. Really, people? I was told that if I returned, they'd put me back on contract. Well, fat chance of that happening. I was told I was not privy to the information being discussed about me. And at the end, I was subtly told that no other job would want me, like they were all I had. I already had 4 job offers. In the end, I got a job with better pay, more flexibility, and more respect. A week later, I was called begging to take my old job back. The revenge. A month later, I was in transportation with a new student who I discovered was in the program I taught at my old job, and being petty, I struck up a conversation. Me. Not to bother you, but can I ask a question? Student. Sure. Me. Do you have a math teacher? Student. Yes. But we were told that she's still on vacation and she wouldn't be returning for another couple of weeks. Wheels starting to turn in my head. Me. By any chance, do you know the name of this teacher? Student. Yes, her name is Ms. Mary. Me. Started chuckling. I'm Miss Mary, and the institution has been aware for weeks that I'm not returning. You can tell your classmates that. Needless to say, she was pissed and shocked. To get a certification for the program, it is a must that you complete the math course. After that, I made sure to call the lecturer who had recommended me. I informed him what had happened to me and told him if he really cared about his students, he wouldn't recommend anyone else to that place. He was livid. The fallout? News started to spread at the institution that there was no math teacher, and the majority of the students left the program. This program was also subsidized per student by the government, and with so many students leaving the institution, took a hit financially. In the middle of the term, they got the overseas external examination results of the students I'd taught. It was the best result the institution had ever had for math. 98% of students passed. I was called, congratulated, and offered back my job. But they still hadn't found a replacement. No thank you. Because of what had happened to me, no one would recommend a decent teacher to the institution, so they got stuck with someone who was taking a semester off of college because he had failed too many courses. After 3 months, he left and the program further went down the drain. They lost out on their subsidy. Because of that, they couldn't pay other teachers to do the program, so no one would take up teaching the classes for the other courses. Their reputation went downhill. And 3 years later, they're still calling me to consider coming back. Just some clarification for this story, my dad is a bail bondsman. For those who do not know what that is, a bail bond agent, also known as a bail bondsman, works independently or as a representative of the agency. His role is to complete bonding paperwork with an accused person, receive payments, and track down the person if he fails to appear in court. No, he is not a bounty hunter, but that's okay if you thought that. We get that a lot. So one day, after a hearty breakfast at a hop, we were riding around town and we saw a lady walk out of the wooded area covered in mud and looked weak. We drive over, and to our surprise, it is Crackhead, who had cost my dad a lot of money in his business. She sees my dad and runs to a nearby empty mall parking lot. The mall is not that busy as it is 40, 50 years old and not many people go to it, and tries hiding behind a car. The next part is what I got from my dad. She reeked of body excreta and was very high. She had been hiding in the woods for 2 days. My dad's friend is a police officer and he showed up. She tried to run, but my dad just grabbed her by her shoulders and detained on the ground. Enter entitled lady. She showed up and just about hit the officer. She and entitled lady 2 start screaming about how we need to stop abusing them and that they are recording it all. When my dad's friend starts to explain that he's a police officer, he was off duty but had his squad car. She starts calling him a liar and pulls out a taser. The officer and my dad draw their guns and she screams and jumps back into the car. The entire time, I am dying of laughter, and entitled lady calls the cops, which is hilarious because my father's friend was radioed to go to. They all ended up going to jail for assaulting a police officer. This happened while I was working at a grain elevator over the summer. We were wrapping up the wheat harvest and loading up shipping trucks to outbound our wheat to other facilities. Working at this location was me and my boss. I would load trucks and he would weigh them and sign off their shipping tickets. One of the days we were outbounding, a driver came through in the morning who did not have a working weight gauge in his truck. Basically, the little dial that told him when he had the right amount of wheat in his trailer. For context, the weight must be 80,000 pounds for interstate shipping and 85,500 pounds for highway shipping, or what we call 80.55. This truck needed the 85.5, and since he had no gauge, I had to eyeball it. I got close, 82,500, but he threw a fit because he was underweight and told my boss how bad I was at my job. He came back around noon and said he fixed the gauge and would tell me when to stop loading his truck by honking the horn. I agreed and filled his truck until he honked. Went in way under, around 78,000. He complained again to my boss, saying I should be let go, although my boss backed me up since he heard the horn and knew he told me to stop filling his truck. He came back and we filled his truck up to 80. 3,000, more complaining, but he left eventually. He came back one last time that afternoon. He again told me to wait for the horn. I obliged, filling his truck to his desired amount. The thing was, though, I knew he'd be over the weight limit. As you can see how much you filled the trailer on the previous load from the dust marks on the sides of the trailer. He weighed in, 80,000. He complained to my boss again, which got him nowhere. Since he was over, my boss would not sign his ticket, and he could not leave until he was dumped. The thing was that I was loading other trucks, and so he had to wait about half an hour before I even got to him. I unloaded his truck until he said I needed to stop and then went back and weighed. 500 pounds over. He threw a big fit, but my boss shut him down, saying he was just following the law and that it would be him that got in trouble and not the driver should something happen. The driver claimed he had never been in a wreck before and that my boss was overly cautious, even though we had already had 4 really bad grain truck accidents this season already. He eventually stopped complaining and came back out to weigh and had given up letting me decide when to stop. I decided to get a little revenge for how much trouble he had been causing and how delayed he had made us while simultaneously trying to get me fired from my job. I unloaded his truck around 450 of the needed 500 pounds and told him to go weigh. My boss radioed back. He was 40 pounds over. Cue more complaining from the driver, and he refuses to get off of our scale or to go through the unloading pit again. My boss offers to have one of us grab a 40 pounds capacity bucket and climb up the trailer, fill the bucket, and send him on his way. He refuses and angrily dumps the wheat on our scale, gets my boss to sign the ticket, and leaves. The only downside was I had to shovel the 40 pounds off the scale. He was at our facility for about 2 hours, which was enough time for him to go to the plant and pick up another shipment before closing time. It's important to know that these truckers are paid more by the amounts they bring in, not by the hour as much. The next morning, my boss tells me while I'm opening, he called the regional boss, and that driver was severely criticized for trying to break the law, get me fired, and dumping wheat on the scale. He was transferred to an elevator another 30 minutes away from his plant, meaning he'd have to drive more and likely lose a shipment a day versus if he had been picking up wheat from our elevator. The elevator he got sent to also happened to be the main county elevator, so he would likely get fined if he acted like that there. Let me start off with that I've changed work twice in the past few months. Let's get to the point. By changing the work, I also had to change houses. Right now, I'm in a house with 7 other people. Thankfully, I got my own room. As soon as I moved in, I found my nemesis. He's my neighbor. He lives basically across the hall from me. He loves to smoke indoors. I've never been a confrontational person. I hate that, and I have had bad experiences with neighbors before. So this fella, let's call him Nemesis, has been smoking in his room, and the smell gets True House. I never went to him and said anything because it's in-house rules and it's obvious that you don't smoke inside, and I don't smoke. I quit a while ago. So for me, it's disgusting. I just feel sick. I reported this to people renting this house to us. Remember, I didn't go to Nemesis with this problem because he barely understands English. And when he talks, I just nod my head and don't really care anymore what he wants from me. After I reported this incident, the owner called Nemesis and told him that if he smokes again, he can look for his own housing. Basically, he would be kicked out. The same day, Nemesis came to me and was yelling something like, "Why did you tell the owner? Why didn't you come to me and say anything?" I told him that he signed a contract with that rule in there and it's obvious that he shouldn't smoke in the house. This happened on October 29th. Since then, I hadn't felt any cigarette smell in the house until last Friday. As I mentioned before, I've quit smoking for a while, so we are sharing toilet, 4 people, and last Friday morning, I went to the toilet and I smelled cigarettes. It wasn't strong smell, but it was there. Then I say a cigarette butt in the toilet. I reported this, but I didn't receive any answer. Now, let's go to last night. I had plans today with a friend of mine. I had to wake up pretty early, so I wanted to go to sleep at around 1:30ish a.m. But Nemesis had other plans. He decided to bring his friend to the house and play FIFA all night and yell, scream, moan, talk very loud, and other sounds that I don't know how to describe. Well, I was okay with it as long as I could sleep, but I couldn't. 3 a.m. rolls up, and he decides to turn on music on speaker. Pretty loud. At that point, I was pissed. I went to his room, knocked on his door very loudly. I had my camera on so I could have proof of this interaction, and if he would decide to come on to me and yell again that I should have gone to him, we'll have proof that I did, but he didn't care. This is how it went. I knock on the door loudly and the door opens. Nemesis and his friend look at me. Me. Turn off the music, it's 3 a.m. I have to wake up early and I want to sleep. Nemesis and his friend. Sorry, it's all good, okay? Okay. Me. I don't care. Turn off the music, it's 3 a.m. Nemesis and his friend. Okay. Me. Damn it. I then leave. They turned down the music a little bit, but soon enough they turned it back on. I only say once. Then I acted. Of course I wanted to go and beat them or throw their speaker outside, but I don't want to have problems because of some jerks who don't understand simple things. Here where I am. Quiet time is from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So I texted and sent this video to the owner. They said that they will call him, but I believe that they didn't do that. Nemesis and his friend were listening to music until about 9:30 a.m. about the time I had to leave, so he didn't let me sleep. And while I was gone, he was sleeping like a princess in his bed. Just thinking about this pisses me off. I could get revenge by listening to music from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., but I do think about others, and I understand that they want to sleep. It doesn't matter what day it is. So now, I've decided that if this will repeat, which will 100 happen, I will call the cops. Even though I should have done it this time, but I want to let the owner know that I will be doing that. I mean, in conclusion, all I can say is that because he lives here longer than me, doesn't mean that rules don't apply to him. I forgot to mention he has a mini Karen haircut where 90s of his head is bald and in front he has a small spot of hair, which I think is hilarious. Important info. We decided to have a micro wedding with just our immediate family there, around 10 people. We got married at a venue that is known for holding very large events, but we rented a smaller room there. My husband has a child with his ex, so sees her quite often for things related to my stepkid. We were always planning on inviting her to the wedding to see their kid all dressed up and to generally keep a good co-parenting relationship. Before we had invited her, she informed dear husband that she'd be there and asked when and where it was. He was a little taken aback, but as we were planning on inviting her anyway, he just told her. On the day, she showed up to our morning ceremony wearing the shortest dress I've ever seen, over stockings and suspenders. The suspenders could be seen for a good 6 inches before the bottom of the dress, skyscraper heels, nightclub makeup, and costume jewelry. My father actually pulled me aside to ask who hired a dancer. I found out afterwards from mutual friends that she had texted all of them asking when they were getting there because she had invited herself. We hadn't thought to let her know it was such a small ceremony. And when they let her know it was family only and the reception was completely separate, she began to panic a little. And I had the best petty revenge. I asked everyone to be extra nice to her. Every time she tried to sneak away, someone would engage her in conversation. She was extremely uncomfortable and ended up sitting down with her coat covering her. The wedding went off without a hitch. I'm not sure what she expected to happen, but it all worked out fine in the end.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.